This one's hotter than last time. Alright, welcome to my show.
Satin.
And today we have something a little bit different for you. Today we have a friend of the show returning. We've got Ash Tucker, and he's going to show us all about one of his guitars. I won't spoil it just yet, you've probably seen from the thumbnail already. But before I do that, I just want to remind you what this show is all about. This is kind of like a show and tell thing. It's not exactly a gear review, but it does turn into that. But the reason why I started this show is because I like to hear the origin stories of guitars, and I like to see the journey they go on and how that might change. A lot of guitars you get end up being changed about. Maybe the pickups will change, or the hardware changes, or maybe there's a funny story about how you got it. I like to get that kind of stuff, and I have a few of the stories for my guitars, but I have friends who have their own stories to tell, which I want to share with as many people as possible because it's fun and it's a bit of documentation as well, which I really enjoy. To be extra safe and sound, we're wearing masks. It's great that we can do this in person, but we're still being careful. It's out there, folks. Can't say what, because YouTube doesn't like it when you say what it is. But yeah, we're being safe. We've got a table and we've got masks. I apologize for the sound quality difference. I'm using a C414 above us as an overhead, just because I'm still getting used to the whole video production thing. Having individual mics is a bit tricky for me, so I've just got an overhead today. I apologize if the quality isn't as good as it possibly could be, but I'm learning. So thank you very, very much for watching. Let's go downstairs and see what Ash has for us. Hello, and today on
Satin.
we have a special guest today who's returning to the show. We've got Mr. Ash Tucker. Ash, hello, what have you brought for us?
Hello. Today on
Satin.
I've brought my white Les Paul Junior, which doesn't have a name. I wish it did have a name, but it's never got a name. Most of the time it just gets called the wedding guitar because it's been my #1 guitar for all of the weddings when I've been singing for the last 5 or 6 years. So yeah, and I love it very much.
Super cool. How long have you had this guitar?
Yeah, probably about 5 years. I ended up getting it because I joined a band as a lead guitar player, and then while I was singing backing vocals, they found out that I could sing, and then their singer was commuting from London, so they sort of worked out that, oh, you can fill in for the singer, you know, save us some money on travel, or when the singer can't make it. And at the time, I was playing a blue HSS Strat, which had like a 5-way switch, multiple tones. And really quickly when you go to play, like when you're fronting, things like pedals, extra switching, stuff like that, it becomes really difficult when you've also got to sing, make eye contact with the audience, watch what's going on, and essentially lead the band forward. That guitar just really was holding me back, and I'd always wanted a Les Paul Junior for years. I'm a huge like Billy Joe fan, and he played these during the seemingly uncool era of Green Day, like American Idiot, that sort of time. And yeah, Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional played them too. Keith Urban I'm a big fan of, made some incredible tones with like old juniors. Richie Sambora, lots of people played them. And I just had an inkling that it would be the acoustic guitar of electric guitars, which I think is a great way to describe them, because you basically strap them on and you make small adjustments with the volume and tone. You set your amp up in a certain way, but then as a result they work from a singer's point of view.
Yeah. You're
listening to the band as a whole, you only need to make slight adjustments. And yeah, I've kept it ever since, and still continue to use it to this day. You know?
Yeah, that's super cool. It's interesting what you say about the acoustic electric, because I hadn't thought about that. But then when you say that, I can understand, like, just to strap it on and go, it's great. But then to also get the flexibility of doing the lead stuff, because like that volume and tone control, we've said about it before, is so crucial if you know how to use it, and you're good to go. But then again, if you're not so familiar with using it, it will still do you an amazing job.
Yeah, it took me a while to work out that you have to set your amp up differently for it. Like, you can't just go into the front of a clean amp and think, well, I'll just use distortion pedals to get myself around it. I mean, you can do that, but I worked out, like, if this is the only thing I've got and I'm going into the front of the amp through a tuner pedal, because, you know, I don't trust myself to tune completely clean all the time, but going into the front of the amp, so you have to set up the amp so it's driving. And then, because what P90s do, when you roll the volume down, they kind of naturally do that thing where they, not only do they lose body, but they clear up.
Yeah.
So they're humbucker sounding single coils. So you turn them down and they clean up for you. And then you use the tone control to sort of, if you need that extra little bit of clarity for the clean sound, you ride the tone control. Or if you go full pelt, and that added top end you just roll the tone out, and then you get that kind of, it's a Les Paul, you know.
You can pick slightly further. Like
Yeah, or
slightly
pick in a
further
different
forward.
place, totally. Yeah, pick towards the bridge, it's more telly sounding, pick towards the neck, you can get, I've actually, with the tone rolled back, it took me a little while as well to get that, a lot of people were like, oh, if you roll the tone all the way off, you get woman tone. And I actually find if you pick by the neck and roll the tone back to about 2 or 3, so not completely off, you still get some of the transients of the pick, and it does sound like a neck pickup. Like, there was a period where this was the only Les Paul guitar I had because I thought it got close enough, you know?
Yeah, I've actually managed to get a pretty good, pretty convincing Sweet Child of Mine neck pickup intro on the Junior. Just get a decent enough drive tone, and then, as you say, like just dial down the neck tone enough, not all the way.
Yeah.
And picking in the right place with the right amount of attack will get you many places.
Well, if the amp's already driving as well, it will compress in a way that you don't need to roll the tone all the way off.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just, you know, I never got that. I know when people were like, oh, just roll it all the way up. It's like, if you want to get used to the sound of it, sure. But in a live situation, you really don't want to roll it all the way off because it feels weird to play a guitar with the tone all the way off. You don't
You'll
get
just
that
disappear
tap.
behind the bass as well.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to be able to be heard.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to do.
So today we're using the Fender Supersonic, my 22 watt favourite amp, my first valve amp actually. We usually use my Kemper, but today I thought we'd go for a little treat. But what do you use at home? Like, what's your preferred amp when you play the Junior?
I switch actually. So live, when I used to play out, I used to play an AC30. Like, I'd probably say an AC30 is like my preferred amp in most situations. I prefer it without pedals. I prefer to just go into the front. There's something about an AC30 for me where it sits in between a clean, you know, the Marshall thing and the Fender thing, where its ideal spot is when it's just breaking up, but it's not like clean or dirty. Whereas when I'm playing something like a Fender or a Marshall, a Fender I would want really clear, the Marshall I would want dimed, you know, that's like, so the AC30 kind of sits in the middle. That being said, if I'm playing with pedals, I prefer to use like a Fender thing, but at home I use a Fender Concert, which is like an old 80s amp. It's very similar to your Supersonic actually. It's just like an 80s Fender amp designed by Paul Rivera.
Yeah.
And it's just got a Fender clean sound on one side, and then the other side is designed to be like a cranked Bassman. And I A-B'd it. I had a Marshall JMP for a little while at the start of lockdown that I ended up selling because I A-B'd it to that dirty side, and there was a slight difference, but I couldn't really tell. But an AC30 kind of sits in a different place. So I like it with both. It sounds more like classic rock with the Concert.
Huge,
definitely. And then obviously the clean Fender sound. These are great country guitars as well. That I've seen a few videos of people playing really chicken picky country on them. And if you set them up right and you put them into the clean channel of a Fender, they do it, and they do it great. They're just like big Esquire guitars. But obviously they sound great through Marshalls. But the magic for me and the tone I used for it for years was an AC30. You know, just a 2 greenback AC30 that I just would lug in, and my band still hated me for lifting it in. But then the minute you plug it in and you hear it, you just go, oh, it was worth the lifting.
Yeah, that's great. We know from looking at it that it's not exactly stock, but it's not too obvious. So why don't you walk through us some of the changes and why you made them?
Yeah, I normally find with these, it's quite common that like 2011 was a really good period for these. I don't know what it is, because yours is 2011 as well, and I know quite a few other people who have had 2011 models, and they've all, as guitars, they've been built really well. It's just that at the time they kind of skimped on the electrics just a little bit. So I remember it took us a real long time to get the volume and tone controls right, but I ended up changing the wiring harness, so pretty much it got gutted and it had the controls completely changed over. It's just a Junior wiring harness that you can get from, I think it's 6-string suppliers or something like that. Like it's fancy-ish, but it's not, you know, it's not anything super posh. I did change the pickup. Part of the beauty of having a guitar that only has one pickup is you can actually splurge a little bit more on one pickup, because 2 pickups gets quite expensive, even if they're like sort of moderate. When it's one pickup, you sort of go all out. So I ended up buying a Duncan Antiquity, which again was what Billy Joe was using at the time. So I was like, well, that's the Junior tone I know, and that's a great pickup. And changed the tuners because they weren't holding very well. The original ones would stick.
Yeah, mine are doing that.
Yeah,
those original ones.
they would have a bit of trouble with sticking, and there's only so many shows you can do where that just annoys you to the point where you go, if I don't sort this out, I'm getting rid of this guitar, which I didn't want to do. So I did that. That bridge is really interesting as well. I've changed that bridge quite a few times. It didn't really have the original bridge on it for too long. I did for a while put I want to say it was by Mojo Tone or some other company, but it's basically it was a wraparound with saddles on it, so it intonated properly. But in the last couple of months, a friend of mine recommended I try one of the Faber compensated bridges, which is what's on there now. So it's like a bridge with a brass compensated like saddle over the top of it, and you have kind of sacrificed the intonation a little bit. It doesn't play as in tune as it could, but the guitar just like unplugged, the guitar just shouts. It's just so loud, and it just made the guitar overall much more fun to play. So and acoustic guitars as well, going back to that thing I said about them being the acoustic of the electric world, I guess you would say it. You want them to ping out, and acoustic guitars also don't intonate higher up either. You know, they're not built to do that. So when you think of it like that, and you think I just want it to ring and it just makes the guitar sound better, you sort of deal with it. And it's a Junior, it's a pickup rolled into a plank of wood. It's not supposed to be perfect. You know, it's not supposed to be clean. If you want something like that, get a Les Paul Standard or a Studio or something more set for that. But if you want something that you just want to bang chords out and just make a lot of noise and have great tone, go for the Junior. Absolutely.
Yeah. I also noticed that you've put some dial readers on, thumb bleeders.
Yes, yeah. I didn't think about that for a long time because I used to just guesstimate where they would go, but the dial readers definitely helped because then I can see exactly what number I'm on. I should say actually, when I set this guitar up, when I plug this in, I always start with the volume and the tone at 7. So I never plug straight into the amp with that guitar on 10, because if you do that, you're robbing yourself of the
headroom.
The headroom and the capability of what the guitar can do. So I always try and get it so that it's at a level where I can go up or I can go down, but I'm not, and then I get the amp to sound about where it's right, so it's not too piercing. It's about right. It's a good crunch sound, and then I make all the changes. Which you see in the video, I roll the volume down to really clear it up and get that kind of acousticy thing. If I want it really country, I'll roll the volume down and then roll the tone all the way open, so you get the kind of the telly snap. Because you've got to remember, as you reduce the volume, you're also reducing body. So if say your original guitar signal's kind of like this, the minute you start to reduce the volume, your guitar signal's doing this. So it's losing the body, but it's still, because of the P90, it's still keeping relatively the top end you've got, but you would have set it up to not be too bright in the first place. So if you want that extra top, you've got it on the tone, but you don't need it. And then likewise, when you go really dirty, as you turn the volume up, not only does that get bigger, but your top end's going to go up as well. So you want that room in the tone control to be able to knock it back, so that you can fatten it up and make it sound more like a standard.
I think I needed to hear that, because I always start on everything on 10 and then dial it back, and then end up turning the amp a whole bunch as I keep playing a gig. So that's a helpful tip that I should have definitely heard earlier. That's great. But yeah, there's one thing we should bring up as well. I mentioned in my video how that they used a whole bunch of different woods in 2011. On my one it's a beechy, and they had the very last bit of rosewood, and then they also had baked maple, and we believe yours is baked maple, is that right?
I don't know about that. I don't know if it's baked maple, because I've seen baked maple fretboards and I've not been massively convinced that it's...
Oh, I know, it's the rich light.
I think it's rich. Yeah, I think it might be rich light. It's definitely not... I don't want to say it's definitely not ebony, but it just doesn't make sense that it would be ebony, because at the time the only guitars you could really get with ebony fretboards on them... And again, I said earlier to you, like, not only are these two guitars from a great year, they're also quite a rare... Both of them are quite rare colours from that year. Like, from that year you would see there's lots of sunbursts, there's lots of yellows, there's lots of reds. But I've seen very few white ones and I've seen very few blue ones. And you could get ebony board juniors, but they were the Billy Joe Armstrong signature models, and they had a gloss finish on them. So I don't think it's one of those. I'm pretty sure it's got to be rich light, because it wouldn't make sense that they would do one of these cheaper models with an ebony fretboard on it. I don't even have any documentation to tell if it is or it isn't. But when I look at it, it looks too clean to be anything but Richlight. It's very like
synthesized.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of grain in it. It's very flat. So I'm pretty sure it's probably Richlight. But I don't care, you know. And some people would say, well, bad luck, you know, it's not proper rosewood, and I don't care. It's
It feels great.
It's a great guitar.
It's genuinely like one of the best feeling fretboards I've played.
Yeah,
like, it's stupidly smooth and really
and it's,
hard.
And it's done the time. This is another thing I want to kind of go back to about some guitars as well. Like after you've kept them long enough, or they've done enough gigs for you, or they've done the time, all that like forum sniffing stuff, you just forget about it. Like I've loved Junior. They're like my favourites. I really love Les Paul Juniors. Love all of yours. I love the other ones I've played, and I've even wanted more expensive ones. You know, I've seen red double cuts that I'm obsessed with. I think they're the best looking ones.
Both of us have.
But they're every time I think about getting another one, I go, that's done me 5 years. Not only has that done 5 years, that's done probably close to at least 1,000 weddings.
That's impressive.
It must have done. Like it must have at least 800 to 1,000, because it's been around for years. I was going 2 or 3 a week, and just using that. I built another guitar to be the backup to it, and I very rarely used it. It's done a lot of work, and you can see it. Like you can see on the side there, that wearing was normally. I'm pretty sure that's come from when they're playing the first dance over the stereo or something, and I'm sat there leaning on the side of the guitar waiting to get started. I'm pretty sure that's how that's happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, someone turns around to me and goes, "Oh, bad luck, not proper rosewood." I just go, it's done 5 years of work. It's my Junior now, no matter what, it's mine, as I'm sure it is for you with yours.
It's been 1 year with that guitar, and I'm inseparable with it. I love it. I've always wanted a Junior, and the fact that it's pattern blue as well is just even more.
It's a great colour.
Even more reason to keep it. It's so nice. I love them both. They're super cool. And I also noticed, like, just as a quick glimpse, when I changed the bridge on mine, the studs were so stubborn, and they wouldn't come out. Or they would come out, but they wouldn't fit the other bridge, which is really odd. And I noticed that you've got your chrome one still. You've got the chrome studs and the nipple.
They're not the original studs.
Are they not?
I remember that much. Yeah, they're the ones that came from. That was who made the bridge. It was a Tone Pros bridge.
Tone Pros.
And those studs, apparently people really like those studs. They're apparently good. So after we changed the bridge over, and I changed the bridge back again, the guy who was doing some of my teching for me just kind of went, no, just keep the Tone Pro studs, because they're good studs.
Yeah.
So they are different studs. I don't know how hard the old ones were to get out, but he would probably be able to take that better than I would, because I'm just that guy. I just hand it off to him and just go make this work. You know, I'm that dickhead.
Mine was a nightmare. Like the right stud is all chewed up from like pennies and screwdrivers I've used, because it's a really like soft chrome, and it just moves and moves and moves. It was terrible, but it's really stuck in there. So to get the action set on mine was next to impossible, just because of how much work that was. Best thing to do is take the strings off completely with tension, and then do it off. But it's annoyed me because everything else is nickel, apart from those 2 studs on mine. And because it's blue on blue with that off, like chrome look, I just noticed it. But it looks much better on a white guitar, because it's just metal.
Yeah.
From that one.
Yeah, I've really grown to like that finish actually. I thought it would bug me that it was gloss, but I just love how easy it wears away.
We haven't mentioned this as Satin, have we?
No, it is. Yeah, it's a Satin model. So it's a 50. I'm pretty sure the model name of it was a 1958 reissue Satin model, which at the time of coming out they would have been somewhere between 500 to 700 quid. Which is
58 reissue.
I think so. I'm fairly sure, because
they were double cut in 58.
Yeah, but they were still making, so they still would have been making single cuts in 58, the same they would have been making double cuts, just the double cuts were new in 58. But the actual model number was a 1958, you know, these reissues were called 1958 reissues.
That's cool.
But they weren't expensive. I remember playing them when they first came out, and they were somewhere between 600 to 500 to 700 quid, which is about what they are now. They're going up a bit, but that was about the price, and I got that for about 500 quid.
Yeah.
So, happy days for me. I was over the moon.
Super happy days. And it sounds great, and you can hear for yourself in the sound demo And I just want to thank Ash so much for coming onto the show. Ash,
No worries.
thank you very much.
Oh, mate, anytime. It's been
I'll
great.
have you back on at some point with
Yeah,
some other
for sure.
guitars. Be great.
Great.
Thank you, Ash.